Hey dudes, welcome back to another episode of our Rhomas Men's Team podcast. You are about to listen to one of our prior team meetings. If you ever want to join one of our live sessions that we have every Monday and Friday, head over to rhomas.com. That's RHOMAS.com and put your email in and we will send you a live link every time we record. We generally record on Mondays and Fridays. So if you ever want to be on the actual podcast, like we bring men up all the time to talk about their goals, talk about their obstacles, etc., head over to rhomas.com. And then also, if you want to help support the channel grow and also have access to exclusive content, book reviews, extra whiteboard sessions, etc., and some coaching sessions, head over to patreon.com and support us. We would love it. But if not, no biggie. We'll see you on the live sessions. Later, dudes. Enjoy this podcast.
What up, dudes? We're live.
What's up, man? Fresh out of a cold shower, off of a run?
Out of the chilly shower for a little 2-mile run. I had to put in a couple more miles for Team Forest, dude. I've been doing a lot of walks this month. I've just been racking up miles walking. And
Nice, man.
It's been pretty cool. I take my dogs, take the whole squad. So I take my dogs, my baby, go for like a 3-mile walk, which pretty much turns into like an absolute mutiny from both my child and the dogs being like the dogs will like pull backwards. But Maya's like, get me out of this stroller, and then I just pull the dogs and just walk like a psycho for the last mile and a half.
Oh, hell yeah. Dude, I need to, hopefully we do it again next month because I've just been abysmal at sending Troy any data. So hopefully again, we can do it again next month if people are down for it.
Yep. Yeah. The thing I do is I kind of let a couple accumulate and then I just take them, divide it by half because it's the walk-in and then upload it. But yeah, dude, I'm telling you, we can do the Under Armour app and it'll alleviate this whole administration thing. Or we could do the Under Armour app and just everyone join their team, and at the end of the month, we all just send in our collective miles. It's very easy. Just to save Troy the trouble, dude. Troy's got a bay now. He's like, fuck it, I don't need this extra work.
Oh, Troy's got a bay. I didn't know that.
Love
Okay. Okay. All right. Fair enough. My bad, Troy.
No, I'm just teasing old Troy boy. Yeah, I'm peppered up, dude. This was my last day at totally holding down the fort by myself. I did 5 days.
Oh man,
So
that's got to be
I'm
tough.
Yeah, I'm picking up Brittany tonight, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah. How'd you get through it? Do you have a babysitter?
We had a babysitter during the week, but Saturday and Sunday, that was me and old Maya.
Okay.
So yeah, it was fun, man. Dude, I just went and did stuff. I went to my parents' house. We hung out. The key is just like baking them in the sun until they get tired. And then you just bring them home. They fall asleep. So
Nice.
We were just outside all day. It was hot. So, we had fun. She slept through the night. Both nights.
Oh, wow.
The
Wow.
first night, I think this is kind of relevant to all this stuff. The first night, it's funny how the mind works because she wakes up and like 4:30 in the morning, and I had stayed up late last night, or not last night, but I think it would have been Friday night. I got the GTA video game set up for Matt and Shane's Patreon, so I'm up all night playing this thing. I'm up late as hell, having a blast, dude. Then I go to bed at like 1, and I'm wiped. And then at 3:30, she wakes up in like an absolute frenzied and I wasn't prepared for it at all. Like I didn't have any of the bottles ready. The milk wasn't defrosted. All this, all this stuff. So I'm angry. I go and get her, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's just something else. It's another kind of stress when a little kid is just going and it's like usually I'm just like, here, Britt, breastfeed her, and it all goes away. But I was like, so I'm walking her, I'm pissed. I'm like, she didn't even leave the goddamn bottles out. At one point, this is how petty my brain can get, and this is where meditation helps, like being able to notice this stuff and not getting taken up in it. I started thinking about, we had a babysitter stay overnight with her when me and Britt went to a wedding. And I was like, how the hell did this babysitter do this? And then like, she's younger, so her dad stayed with her at the house, and she had told me her dad slept outside on our roof deck. And for some reason, I was like, your fucking dad slept outside, and just got pissed at that. Like, I don't know why. And like, dude, like, so it's all going on. Finally, I completely stopped being angry. I was being angry. I'm just like, dude, this is not helping me. And I just go one through, like, where are the bottles? Let's go. I had to find them. I had to dig them out of the basement, found the bottles, heated up the milk. And like, dude, it just was a lesson. The major lesson is that, anger in those situations just does not serve you at all. So I was able to just kind of like walk through a very stressful situation, grab the bottle, get the milk, put her down, and then, so that was cool.
Yeah. No, man, I don't know what I would do. I mean, that is a level of chaos, like almost Navy SEAL style, where you get this like boot camp instructor coming in and saying like fire drill, and now that you've gotten 1 hour sleep. I don't know how you do that, man.
You have to. That's the thing. You either do it. And it was funny because Chlupa saying it is a true test of Zen because it's like there's nothing more disconcerting than having especially your child being like in the middle of the night. And dude, it is. You either Zen out or you let it take you. And at one point, I was looking at her like, stop crying, don't do that. And it was like, yeah, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So,
What ended up working?
I went and got the milk. I calmed myself down. That's the other thing too. When a baby's crying, you have to be calm for them. And that's I think it applies to anything else. But like,
Yes.
you have to just be calm for them, and they'll keep crying. They'll keep crying. You can't let it throw you into a tizzy. And then, again, I just took her with me. We went down and looked for the milk. Singing to babies helps. So I just started singing them I just make up random songs and like lullaby tunes, or I'll start to narrate everything I'm doing. I'm like, we're gonna get the milk now. Where's your bottles? Where did your fucking mom leave these things? So just talking to them, and eventually they chill out. They'll chill themselves out.
Yeah, I think that's a good prescription for adults too. What I have found, though, let's say in relationships, is that I tend to go too far. So if you have somebody who's freaking out at you, let's say in an intimate partnership, where I tend to go is extremely zen and almost non-responsive, and let that person just kind of get it out. But I also have found that that can come off as disrespectful. Like, how do you manage that line?
Um, well,
Because oftentimes a female counterpart can view that as like emotionally disengaged.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like as long as if you're in touch with what you're feeling because of that, like if they're spazzing and you're like actually feeling the stuff and you're like, hey, man, like, if you can communicate that in real time, I think that's helpful. Dude, I will say, and I hate to propagate this because it's something that I dislike when I hear people say, but like sometimes you got to have the knockdown, drag out argument. And like, dude, we had that like 3 weeks ago. And after that, it was like and like I hate prescribing this because like I heard people say this and I'm like, no, that's wrong. But just from my experience, it's like we got into it like 3 weeks ago, and ever since we didn't like fight each other or anything, but like it was nasty. We were fucking
Just slap box.
We just were like blah, like it all came out, and ever since then we've been kind of chilling. So I don't know, man. I feel like you were saying too, if you zen out too hard, there are feelings that are coming up. When someone's yelling in your face, they're activating you somehow. So it's like the more you can be in touch with that and just be like, dude, like I don't know, you're making me kind of upset. Could you stop fucking yelling at me? First off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I go to like a relatively sneaky and dark place. Like, I just don't say anything. And then, like, in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just more evolved than you are, so, so I don't think that's a healthy thing. But yeah, there's probably definitely stuff that I shouldn't say that. Yeah. I think there's definitely stuff that would build up over time, like some sort of residue. I don't think it's massive, but there is something. And what's the therapy that refers to? It's like where you take like foam baseball bats. I mean, that's the one I've always seen on the movies or something, where it's like some sort of physical release. Do you know the type of therapy that's called?
I don't know what it would be called. It's there's like a whole different branch of things that are like called like somatic based therapies, which are more like body work and things like that. And there's also like psychodrama, which is like not as physical as that, but you would go, we would all be in a group, and like you would be my wife, I'd be me, and there'd be other people watching, and we'd be like I'd be saying exactly what I actually wanted to say to you, and you go back and forth and role play. But I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that before in group seminars where, you stand 6 inches from the other person, look in their face, and they're not allowed to talk. And like, you have to scream at them. Have you ever done that?
No. Well,
Like that?
I've done it in real life, not wanting to, but yes.
Yeah. That's pretty wild. I did not get the same feelings. Like I definitely played full out and I did the whole exercise, but I noticed probably, and this was a men's group that I did it with. I would say probably 70% of the men like ended up just like breaking down and crying their eyes out. Oh yeah. So it seemed like it was definitely some sort of therapy for them, but I didn't get that at all. Like zero. I did it and I was hoping that it would do something, but it did zero.
Yeah, like
for
you
me.
said, everyone's so different. Like what works for some people, and there's also like sometimes you're in that space, and just the fact that you want that to be the thing that relieves you can help too. I'm not saying like I'm undercutting it, like I'm not, I don't think it's bullshit, but you know, um, the well, going back to the argument thing, sometimes too, it's like, like you're getting yelled at, you're just zenning out, you're like, whatever. There is a part of you that's like, shut the fuck up, in your
Hmm.
head, at least for me. And it's like, there's a level of thoughts I'm having where it's like, you're being immature. Like I can get into like just, and that she has a bunch about me that she could throw at me as well. But it's like, sometimes I feel like it gets to the point where like, I don't know. I'm not like advocating this. I'm just saying from my own experience. Like you can do all the nice stuff, but every now and again you have to get to that ground level and like, here's what I'm actually thinking right now, and you just like, bah. And as long as you
Hmm.
can both be like, hey, sorry, we're both kind of human, and we both spazzed, like, let's be good now. I feel like being able to kind of mend that and being like, hey, like, sorry about that is
Yeah.
key.
Yeah. Is there a certain phrase or trigger line, good or bad? Let's say good, on the good side. What is a phrase that can get you out of that? Like, is there an olive branch set of words that work for you? Because there definitely is for me.
Uh, I'm sorry, you're right. Probably no, I don't know.
Yeah, no, no, I would
No, I'm
imagine
kidding.
it's probably somewhere around there.
No, I'm kidding. But no, there's sometimes she'll kind of be like, dude, calm down and kind of like ease me out of it, but I can't really think of anything.
Mm. I can say for me, and I also like to do this to reciprocate as well. It's very difficult. But for me, when somebody just says, that's reasonable, like I can understand how you
Mm,
got there. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And then I have also found that for me, extending that set of words is really helpful as well. It doesn't mean that I agree with it. Doesn't mean that I'm on board with the logic, but I can at least see how you got there. And I think that is so unbelievably important because, and by the way, sometimes there is no logic. And that's where I think there's something hidden
Yeah.
personally. It's like, okay, just explain to me how you got here. And then there will be some sort of gap. It's like, well, then I'm missing. The challenging part for me is to be able to ask that in a respectful way. Like, hey, explain to me how you got from here to here. Um, but then I almost start to get a little aggravated because then I feel like the person's lying to me, if that makes sense. Then
Yeah.
it's like, just explain to me how you got here. I don't understand it. Like, this is you're either lying or you're stupid. Like one of the, and that's like a thing that I have to fix on my head, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, when somebody says to me like, okay, I understand, like that's reasonable, doesn't mean that I'm completely on board with the emotions that you're feeling, because I do think one of the problems we have as humans, and especially in relationships, is you might have a certain line of logic, but then if you make it mean a level 10 thing when it's really a level 5 thing, that creates a whole bunch of chaos for the other person, because it creates this instability in foundation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, if he or she is freaking out about this, like I don't know them as much as I thought, or I didn't know how much it would impact them. It creates a whole bunch of disorientation around the subject.
No, absolutely, man. It's yeah, it can be kind of, like, a lot of that stuff can put you off, especially if you're not, again, like being kind of united in some sort of, especially with relationships. Because we're talking about, first of all, I was talking about like not spazzing with like babies, and you kind of can apply the same rules with like other people.
Mm,
Um, yeah, it just helps, again, like being as honest as possible from like for myself. If I'm in a relationship, I have to be honest with what I'm feeling. If I try to hold back, it's just, I'm like, oh, I don't want to upset them. It's like, well, you're just upsetting yourself in the future at some point.
mm,
So,
yeah.
it's like when you're being honest and you're just like allowing for the, this is one of my biggest struggles in relationships, is like, here's the thing I want to do. I know this other person's going to be kind of opposed to it. And then I could be like, well, I'll just not do it. And you stack enough of those up, and then you start to really not like that other person.
Mm,
And just being like, there has to be space within all your relationships for you to authentically do the things that you think give you meaning. And if the person has a negative reaction about you doing them, you have to just be like, that's your issue. I'm here for you, but like, I'm not giving into that.
right.
Within reason, obviously. If they have a reasonable request, then you have to obviously take that in.
Yeah.
But either way, dude.
Well,
What was
understandable. Yeah, relationships, man. Just out of curiosity, because my girlfriend and I had a conversation about this last night. What is your perspective on phones and transparency and all that kind of stuff? What is the? I feel like
Mm.
this is a very common thing. So I'll just be transparent with the guys. Um, I'm trying my best. We went through counseling and so on to like really to articulate my inner thoughts and feelings. And this is very difficult for me. I, like I said, normally come off as very zen and so on, but I do a terrible job of articulating to my partner what I'm thinking and feeling. So I told her, I said, hey, this is probably just some head trash that's going on in my head, but it seems like you kind of have a vice grip around your phone constantly, and it's just playing with my mind a little bit. And so we actually talked through it, and it was outstanding. Like actually taught, because in the past I would have never, ever, ever, ever brought that stuff up, ever. But I would have let it plant a little seed in my head, and it's like, okay, you want to play that game? Like that's how it can kind of go down as a protection mechanism. So it was a great conversation. Now at the same time, she was like totally cool. She's like, oh my, she's like, no, I'm so sorry. No, here's why it may have seemed like that. And here, she's like, hey, if you want to go through whatever you want. I chose not to, because I just don't want to go down that slippery slope.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, man. I mean, dude, that's well, it's just funny because now like the phones are like a portal to like the world in a way where people never really had to worry about that. But I've had that more like kind of earlier on in relationships where you do that. You look at phones and you're like, if someone does this, like I have my phone. They go like when they sit down, they put their phone screen down, and you go like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, no.
Or you see their notification. There's like things you can do with your notifications where they pop up and it doesn't say who it is, like all that shit. I used to look at that stuff and analyze all that stuff, and you really do have to get to a point where you just say, like, I'm not going to concern myself with that stuff at all. If it becomes glaringly obvious in some way, I'll investigate that. But like, just for your own sake, it's like that for me tends to be when issues of self-worth are tied up on like this other person's behavior.
Yes.
But if you're able to be like, look, I know I'm good. I know I'm doing what I'm doing. And if someone chooses to like enhance their personal experience secretively by having sex with other people, it's like that's their jam up, not mine. And it takes a lot to kind of get there. But that's how I kind of look at that whole scenario. Like I just don't have the mental energy to worry about that. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's so draining and it's so visceral in terms of like
draining,
how you feel about it. It's like you can't. And if that's the case too, it's like, what do you do? Why would you even like if you even think that's a possibility, and that it could just be that was the way my mind worked. I didn't trust anyone, and I was always like very kind of blah blah blah. But as I've kind of like, because I just give her my phone, I'm like, here, look, I've had a total open phone policy. I'm like, knock yourself out.
Yep. I'd rather, that's the same exact policy for me. It's like, I don't want to be thinking, like, I don't want to be not nervous, but I'd rather just have like, say, hey, go look through everything. Cause I don't want to have to deal with some sort of explosion in the future that's made off of nothing. It's like, dude, go view whatever you want. It's
total. I kind of, I'm an advocate of total phone transparency. And I've heard before, like, well, if my group chat, like, there's shit like dudes talking about group chats that like your wife or girlfriend just has no business reading. It'll just upset them. It'll upset and shock them.
There's no benefit in that. I told her,
I said, just look at whatever you want. Just stay out of my group chats with my bros. Like, it's just not for you. And she respects that. She's like, I don't want anything to do with it. I think she saw it once and was like, ah.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, get out of there. Don't go in there.
That's not a good idea.
That's our special time, dude.
It is. It's like going to a man's locker room. Not a good idea for women, man. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the prescription in that. Like, that's like level one of building a life with another person. And like, if that block isn't secure and stable, like all the other levels are tough. And it's like, the reason I was actually thinking about this last night. I was driving home, and like the reason it's so, it's not so much it is. It's not so much like the betrayal of the deed that they're doing. It's just the lie. If both people are on the same page, the thing's not that big of a deal. But it's like, it's a lie, and it's a lie around something that has such like devastating effects in terms of like sexual promiscuity within a relationship. It's like you can alter your partner's reality in ways that are just mind blowing. In terms of like you could sire a child, she could get pregnant by some dude's child, and like now it's like you're locked into a thing where like you don't know this and you got to find this out, and it's just like for the child, for you, it's like it just puts people in the most horrible of situations where it's like, or just be honest and don't do that shit. And if you feel like you're like overwhelmingly being compelled into those kind of behaviors, just be like, hey, here's what I'm dealing with, you know?
Yeah. Well, Matt, you bring up a great point. I think as men, we need to chat about this more. Um, the idea of cheating on someone, and as men, we definitely need to chat about this more, like 100%, because there's almost an element of when you're in a relationship, um, you almost score. I shouldn't say when you're in a relationship. Like as men, we tend to have these implied points of like, how many women have you been with? How many girlfriends? Like how attractive are you? Like all of that stuff. Like that's a very real thing. Whether or not men want to admit it, that's a very real thing of like, scoreboard type of thing. And whether that means physical score, but it doesn't matter. Like with it, like female attention, all that. But that can go too far into relationships, and then you're still seeking that, and maybe even your biology is pushing you towards volume. Um, which I also think is a good point. I read a book recently on, no, not recently, probably 2 years ago, on relationships. And this author was basically saying that men believe that, and there's a female author, men believe that their biology is pushing them to, quote, spread their seed, right? She said that's a lie. That is not a lie. Like if you go to, like, when I listened to, what was it, Robert Sapolsky's course on evolutionary biology, like he will tell you that's not a lie. He's an expert in this category.
Mm-hmm.
So to blatantly say, oh, that's just fabricated, that's false. There's definitely something to a lot of men that push this volume type of mentality. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
There's more of a biological imperative. Like we
Yeah.
have, it's like having to take a dump. You get a feeling over a while, and you go, "Ugh."
Right. Yeah. Right. So then from there, okay, well, now how do we make that work within the context of a relationship? And I think some men have been taught, and I think, especially on the East Coast, Matt, and let me know if you can relate to this. There's almost like, oh yeah, like, you go out and do your thing, as long as you don't get caught, like that sort of a thing, or like don't
Sure.
get married, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like once you're in a committed relationship, if you do cheat, that destroys the other person. Like if you've ever had a hint of if somebody's ever cheated on you or even come remotely close, like you almost get like a little dizzy. Like, can you relate to that feeling? If you feel like
Yeah.
you're stumbling on something, it is very, very disorienting. So just that fact alone, because I think we tend to disassociate the impact that it has on that other person by our actions, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, when you're younger, it's one of those things like I saw Troy's thing of like, you have to get it out of your system. It's like I really don't think you kind of. I mean, I guess now like we're kind of drowning like tons of porn and all this other stuff. Like yeah, you shouldn't like come out of like high school and be like, I'm looking for a wife. Like that's, you're just, in my opinion, you're not really that developed at that point. And if you do that, it's fine if that works. But it's like, yeah, you do have a period where you're kind of roaming around doing your thing, and maybe you can't be, as long as you communicate that up front, like, hey, I'm really not looking for that. That's one thing. But like,
Yeah, and good luck having that be well received on the other side. It might verbally be reciprocated, but I have never found that to be actually reciprocated ever, 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 ever. I don't care how many people or females tell me that, oh yeah, they totally, women can play around. Just that is not true with my experience, and it's not true for anybody else who I've ever talked to.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's a very kind of complicated thing, but yeah, it's not. But so to answer your question, and I kind of just sidetracked myself. Uh,
Oh, sorry, but
so
so Troy was saying there's needs to be a period of time where you just get it out of your system, and
no,
you're
you
saying
were
don't get
saying,
married out of
yeah, I
high school.
mean, I think do whatever do whatever you want, but it's like I had this whole thing of like just like the kind of like egotistical, like, yeah, man, I'm on dating apps. Oh man, I'm having sex with like this chick and that chick. Oh man, I'm having sex with two chicks at once. And it's like I'm just being a dickhead. Like you can slice it any way you want, unless you're like openly communicating that and like, hey, here's my deal. Like that takes a whole different ball game than being like, oh man, I'm a like the Bill Bellamy how to be a player stuff. Like, oh damn, I almost got caught. It's like you're being a jerk off, dude. Like,
Right.
but so to answer your question, which I believe was, can you just summarize it? I think I know exactly what you're saying. I just want to make sure what I'm about to say makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's to have an open discussion or start the discussion around how devastating cheating can be,
Yeah.
and like having some perspective on it. Because right now, I don't think as men, I don't think really think we talk about it at all. I've never once really had a conversation, except for Matt, probably with you, around how devastating that should be, and how I think as men we need to be the stewards or leaders of that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a very rare occasion where a female will cheat on a male. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but if I had to guess, it is primarily men cheating on women. That's my guess.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. They can. The
I
thing
will
is for
look that
them,
up.
they can do it way easier and get away with it way easier. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really like I said. For me, it's like it's just a lie. It's lying. It's like it's a very vicious way of lying. That's
Mm,
like it's just not good. And as you get older, it's like yeah, of course, like when you're 20, all this and that, like it doesn't matter. But as soon as you have kids, and even if you don't have kids, it's still a miserable thing to do. But when you have kids, like you're now those ripples are like hitting so many people, and it's
mm,
just not a good it's just not a good thing. It's like it's a bad thing to do. And again, it's like it takes, in my opinion, it takes a lot more kind of, it's more impressive to like communicate those things and be like, hey, like this isn't working for me in this regard.
mm,
Let's explore some other route. And you'd be surprised, like how many people would be like, all right, fuck it, let's do it.
mm.
Um, that's all you can do is be upfront. But like and even the thing is too, even if you get away with, people are like, well, I don't get caught, I get away with it. It's like even if you get away with it, you now have to inhabit this like paranoid reality where like it could
Hmm.
all fall apart at one moment, and like, dude, that sucks. Like that's not fun. It's like if you
Yep.
like the example I would use is like, so say you like go into someone's house and steal like $100,000 cash and you get away with it and nobody catches you. It's like that's cool. You have $100,000, but you're now living in a world and perpetuating a world where people can come into your house and steal $100,000, which sucks to live in that kind of world.
Mm. Right.
So yeah, man. I mean, it's like for me personally, it's like I was a somewhat of a pig in my younger years, and like was pretty like whatever, didn't care, blah blah blah.
Mm.
And now that I've obviously stopped that, I just feel like I've been happier not being like that. Where before I was like, fuck that, dude, I'm walking. And it makes sense when you're 24 years old. It's like yeah, it can be kind of tough to like satisfy your what you want to do and all your callings when you're kind of like tied down in that regard.
Mm.
But as you get older, it's like the things you think were like cool when you're like that age are just like absolutely devastating.
Yeah. Well, I also think Matt, I think you're hitting on a point of having layers of commitment and very clear terms, if that makes sense. Just like we do on this team, it's like, say exactly what you want and what you're willing to work for, but just be very clear about your obligations. And I think in relationships, we're not taught that. Like we're taught to basically, hey, like, you go out with somebody, you date them for X amount of weeks or whatever it is, then you relatively quickly become exclusive. And I think that is also a problem that we have, is because then it tightens the reins too quickly, and you don't have enough time to understand that person, their behavior, and they don't have enough time to for vice versa. And then all of a sudden you're in this situation that you really do not want to be in. So then all of a sudden, a month down the road, 2 months down the road, now you have wandering eyes because you never made sure the foundation was settled to begin with before you got into that obligation.
Yeah, that's why you're supposed to wait. I mean, it's impossible to do it, but if you're able to be like,
It's very
hey,
hard to do it. It's
I'm
very,
waiting.
very hard to
I'm
do it.
gonna wait. I mean, that's the ultimate power move. Like, that's one thing I'm like, such a bitch, dude, for not maintaining chastity early on in relationships.
Yeah,
It's the
yep.
absolute power move. And I used to make fun of like all those Christian camps. I'm like, oh, that's so funny. It literally solves all those problems. Like, no, we should wait for like 6 months. You
Mm,
can actually see if you like the person or not.
yeah.
It's like it's very
Yeah.
simple. But
Yeah,
yeah, so,
that's why dating apps kind of make it a little more complicated. Obviously, dating speeds up velocity in some good ways in terms of like, you can meet a bunch of different people that you would have never met before. You can kind of start to be a little more selective, et cetera. But at the same time, it also gets you further down the field before you even met the person.
hmm
So there's a certain level of expectation by date number one because you both have reviewed each other's profiles, et cetera. And it's almost like a checklist at that point, like interview style, versus being able to casually observe the other person from an arm's length distance, understand their values and all that kind of stuff, then go down and say, hey, we should get some coffee sometime. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I could see that. But again, a lot of this is like a lot of these problems, again, this is just from my experience, can be prevented when if you're actually okay with yourself, a lot of these problems disappear. So if you start to go like,
Yeah.
look, I'm self-assured, I feel okay with myself as I am, and you actually believe that, to like, let's say like there'll always be, like say like 15% of you that might doubt that, but like if the majority of you is like kind of in line with that, a lot of the stuff falls off. Like, it's like, cause say like, you goes for a while, you're in like a dry spell or whatever, all that stuff.
Mhm.
you can just you can flip that whole like, pretty shitty time into like a period of like just kind of working with like that feeling within yourself and like examining it and trying to like not let that dictate your life, if that makes sense. And that's like
Mm.
that's with food, that's with all this stuff. You can kind of like all these things that we struggle with and overindulge in and like get like jammed up about when say we have a period where like money's scarce. It's like we can either, hate the world, or we can be like, well, let's use this time to like, work on some other stuff. Like, dude, I'm telling you, some of the best times of my life looking back on them, the things that I'm the most grateful for was me losing all of my money at once multiple times over and over. Like I just
Mm.
that helped keep me kind of straight in a way that I'm like really grateful for. So it sucked at the time, but looking back on it, I'm like, damn, that's awesome. And you can either, with all this stuff, you can either let it kind of like steamroll you into this like, kind of like embittered, like fuck this, fuck that, or you can just take the time to be like, let me explore why this bothers me so much.
Mm.
You know,
Is
and
there an
still working.
element?
Go ahead. Sorry.
And what?
And while still working to solve the problem, but like getting rid of all that resentment and all those kind of like you'll feel all the emotions associated with it, but not letting them dictate your behavior, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, and I think where that can get a little tricky is in a relationship being comfortable and confident in your ability to produce future results if needed, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like so this relationship, okay, there's a chance of this person cheating on you. It's like, okay, but you're confident in your own ability to then go out and get another girlfriend if you needed to. But there's that little gray area there that only you will know this. It's like being confident in yourself is if it's taken too, how is this? If you take that too far and then all of a sudden keep your options open, but then start to develop like those options while still in a relationship. Does that make sense? So maybe it's in the context of like, okay, like, my girl, she's, over here talking to this guy, or she's hiding her phone or something like that. So maybe I'm going to extend the conversation with that cute coworker over there. You never be able to prove it, right? Like that sort of thing. I
Sure.
could always say,
Yeah.
well, and that's where I think as men, we need to like have that integrity there as a hard line in the sand. Like just because you're confident and because you could get results does not mean you should start to plant the seed in other directions, because number one, it could be devastating to your partner. Number two, it's going to disperse your own focus away from
Yeah.
that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's called cushioning. People, a lot of women do this,
Mm.
especially now with like the dating apps. Is like they'll be dating a guy, but like entertaining a bunch of other people as like kind of friends at once, and then people have studied this and like the way people jump from one thing to the other, and that's just a thing. People, if they're not like completely secure in a relationship, will cushion it with exactly what you're talking about, with like the potential seeds of other relationships, like plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Mm.
Yeah, and again, it's just like kind of a milder form of lying. It's like I'm very aware of like who I'm interacting with, and like especially if they're women and all that stuff, and it's like you just have to be like, well, I can't, like, it's happened to me before, like I just can't really be like friends with that person like that. Like it's just,
Mhm.
I know I'm like stuff is coming up for me that is like could lead to like a bad situation, and I'm just gonna chop it right here and be like later.
Yeah. Now, do you see? Now, I'm so happy you brought up a term for that. I love when things are termed because it helps me
Yeah.
memorize them. Um, do you see that? Where are the errors? I assume it's an error in moral code. I assume that. And then I also assume it's an error in logistics. It's like, again, it's just the lack of focus. Like if you are cushioning, that's going to take a certain amount of your psychology and emotion away from the thing you're supposed to be building. No different than if I was trying to get really good at basketball, but then I was cushioning or dabbling with volleyball and racquetball and
Exactly.
football, kind of on the side, just to say, well, if basketball falls through, then I've at least have 5% practice in these other areas. But it's like that cumulative 5% over the other 25 things that or 5 things you're doing. That's a quarter less energy that you're unable to spend on the nucleus of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and it's also like it's just kind of undermines and dilutes the relationship if that's on the table, because again, anything can happen. That is a reality, but it's also
Mm.
like, and in my opinion, and this is kind of the attitude I hold with, especially with like, my marriage the second time around, obviously, it's like you're either in or you're out. Like there's no, like if you're
Mm.
kind of toes in here and over in there, it's like you're just, there's nothing wrong with that. And people oscillate back and forth. It's understandable, but it's like you're either in or you're not in. And it's like if you're in it, yeah, that you just accept the possibility that you can be devastated on that level and
Mm.
just keep moving on. That's all you can do.
Where do
in my
you
opinion.
find, what do you say to the guy who says, why should I take that risk? Like I'm going to hedge
Well,
my bets. I'm going to hedge my bets along the way because just in case she's doing
sure,
something, then I'm going to have my cushioning practices over here.
sure. Well, it's also like, imagine if all of that was just something you were projecting onto the relationship and you spoiled it just off of a projection that wasn't even real.
Right.
So it's like that, that could be a pattern that just it pops up with every single person because it's like that's something in you. So it's like in a lot of
Mm.
times too, I've experienced that. Someone told me this like when I was younger and it fucked me up. Is they're like, the more suspicious you are, it's typically a show of how kind of like you've been kind of having like thoughts like that,
Yeah.
and typically
Yep.
that kind of there's a correlation between that,
Yeah.
which I've
To
like
think like a thief, you need to be a thief.
yes exactly
Yeah. Yeah.
so I would say that the main benefit is it's hard to get to know yourself because there's a ton of blocks and everyone for the most part will block certain aspects of themselves off. They don't want to like think about it. But when you interact with someone in an open and honest way, they almost will a kind of like point out little things about you that are like they should change in my opinion. Mine was like I'd be like weird about asking people for stuff and just weird and like really kind of personal. I'd be like real inhibitive in some way, or like where I'd be like, I don't want to do this or that. And whereas like Brittany would, she would like call me into situations that would make me highly uncomfortable. But like by being in a
Mm.
relationship with her, I had to just confront those things and kind of grow in certain aspects. So I think when
Mm.
you the upside to that of being like the total abandon into another person in that regard is that if you trust someone that completely, it enters you into a relationship where you get to know yourself better and then do the same thing for another person. But it's like
Mm.
if you're half in, half out, you're just again you're kind of still alone trying to play like ego I want to win games where it's like it's and it's not like that again we kind of all oscillate back and forth between being in that space. I'm not saying it's like a perfect on or off thing, but for me that's been the big thing of just being fully into it and then just it like it alters your life, it changes things, and in my experience that's been for the better. But you have to be honest. As soon as you start lying or withholding and all that stuff, it starts to tweak the experience into something that's kind of like weird and unreal.
Mm.
So, and obviously there's an area of discretion. Like you don't want to like. There was that show on Louis. They're like, let's just get it all out in the open and just say everything we think about each other, and like they just like devastated each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if like there comes a time where like you have to, if things are coming up a lot and a lot and a lot, they have to be communicated in some sense. So
Mm.
I would say that's kind of to answer your question. That to me is what you get in return for kind of like that reckless abandon into a relationship. And again,
Mm.
a lot of this is mitigated by like truly getting to know the person and not just trying to gratify your ego initially, being like, oh, I need some pussy, yeah. All right,
Mm.
let's go and do stuff together, yeah. It's like again, and I was the king of that for a long time, and it's like it just doesn't yield a good result ever for me personally.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I like even if you're in a relationship that stemmed from that, you can still start these kind of things, being honest, being open, and like you can morph that type of relationship into like a solid one. And that that's to everything, but or that's like every kind of relationship. Like there is a little bit of that in the attraction phase anyway, but for me, it's just like I'd rather be the person who's just being the honest one, doing all the right things. And if I were smited on that level, I genuinely feel like I would just be like, "You dickhead!" Like
Mm.
that was dumb. So, and then I just move on from there.
What do you think are best practices around harnessing? And I mean, like literally, like best practices, tactical best practices in harnessing trust in a relationship. Like I legitimately think what you said, Matt, I think is a great idea. Like, instead of putting my phone like this, face down on the table, why don't I put it up? And why don't I turn my messages to show the name of who? Like those are things that I'm going to start implementing right away. I originally turned those off for business purposes and so on.
Gotcha.
But like, what are those little things or even macro things that you think should be implemented in a relationship to harness
Uh,
trust?
I well, it's just again, it's just like being honest, always expressing the things. If something's bothering you, let them know. Um, the phone thing is a big one, and just again, like not even like coming forward and just being like, like even if so, say here's the big one. So say you get a message from somebody, or like someone hits you up who like you have a feeling towards, like it's kind of like hazy. It could be some sort of romantic thing, or you're feeling something like that. Like if I get a message from women, and if it's like slanted like that, I usually just go on. I'm like stop. or I just like, I just ignore it. But I'll always tell her. And it's always a benefit too. If women you're with hear that another woman is interested in you, you bring it right to them. You go, check this out. And then it's like, to me, I always keep everything totally open and transparent like that. It's kind of like a cool humble brag you can do too. Like, check this out.
So you think as soon as something smells a little off, you just right out of the gate, report it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, there was like, it was funny. Like I had a situation when I was in school for social work, and there was someone I was like kind of buddying up with. They were like nice to me. Everyone there kind of hated me for the most part. Well, a good amount of people were kind of either indifferent or didn't like particularly kind of attack me. And the person was like very nice to me, and I kind of knew there was like, it was like
Mm.
there was something there a
Yeah,
little
because
bit.
you tend to know.
You
You
know,
like you
and I
know.
knew,
You,
and I
you could
knew, and
easily
I
say, "Oh
tried.
no." Yep.
Yep, and I was like, and I didn't do anything, but I just like I knew it was there, and I just kind of like you can kind of enjoy it a little bit, And then it was funny because
Well, attention feels good, and that's
we
something we've got to confront.
yes, and we all went out one night, and Brittany came with us. Brittany came out with us, instantly recognized it, and just was like, and just like in like girl language, just beheaded this woman in front of me, and I was like, ugh. And she was like, she fucking likes you. I was like, yeah, at least I didn't like, I wasn't hiding anything, but and I was like, you're absolutely right. There was like this, we were being friendly, and it's just like, it gets weird in those terms, and it's like, again, I didn't do anything, and it wasn't like, but it was
Mm.
like, we were cool, we were being friendly, and I started picking up on the vibe that it was like, this is might be being expressed as it's like there's more desire to that, not just like, hey, bud, what's up, pal?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but luckily, I wasn't like, no, 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 you can't come. I was just like, hey, come out, let's go, and just living like that, basically.
Yeah. And that is I mean, that in itself, not saying that you were doing this, but like a tactic in itself is hiding in plain sight because then you can say, oh, there's nothing there. Right? I invited you out, I invited her. Like, totally cool. Like, but
Yeah,
that can be, again, not saying that you were doing that. That
sure.
can be almost a sneaky way of justifying it and making it up to code, but not really.
Okay,
Because the
sure,
real code is in in
exactly.
both of your heads.
Yep, and that was the thing when she was like, I think she likes you, blah 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 blah. I could have been like, you're being ridiculous and started gaslighting her, but I was like, yeah, I think you're right, bro. Like I was just
Yeah.
honest. I was like, yeah, like I think you're right. Like I'll give you that one, and that was, so that was, and then from then on, I was just like, there's a line that's been drawn, and I just like, just stopped communication, shit like that. That's something I had to do, and I could have been like, well, that's not fair, but I was like, that's probably for the
Not
best.
worth
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, it's the easy things to recognize are the bold things, like, the blatant text message or the blatant whatever. The difficult things are these little micro patterns where you know what's going on, but it's very easy to be like, no, what are you talking about? Like it's nothing, that sort of thing. And that's
yeah,
very, very difficult to understand.
yeah, absolutely. So that's but yeah, that's pretty much it, man. It's like just be honest and like, and she'll still like we'll be out to dinner and she'll like catch me like staring at butts and shit, and we just laugh. Like it's just not it's you just look, and then all of a sudden I look back and there she is looking at me. I'm like, "Ah, shit, and you just laugh. It's like you can kind of laugh. You start to like laugh about that kind of stuff, and it stops becoming as like like that
Mm,
like creepy horror music in the background of all those scenes. Kind of like the volume goes down on that, and you're just two human beings, and you're like, ah, shit, and like
yeah.
now we both check them out. We're like, damn, look at that. So that was pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah, we just check out butts and compare notes. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, again, that's the key is like if you're not being honest in relationships, I feel like there's this like creepy soundtrack that starts playing behind everything. And as soon as you just like set the record straight on stuff, it just goes away and you can just, do your thing.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, and if anybody, I'm just saying this stuff out loud because, I've gone through it. I'm sure Matt's gone through it. Like all of these little nuances we as men have all gone through. And I think if anybody's in that situation, it's like if you're doing any of that stuff, number one, it's normal. But number two, try to stop it. Or like try stop going down that little creepy road that gives you more options or makes you feel good. Or when the girl looks back at you and you're in a relationship, don't look back at her. Like that is extremely difficult. Like I'm not
Yeah.
pretending like it's not. But I think the benefit that you'll find, and that I have found, I think all men who've tried that alternative path, let's say the right way, or that's more congruent with your long term goals, um, there is a pressure that's lifted off of your shoulders. Oh man, like
Yeah.
knowing that your girlfriend or your wife can go through this thing, and that you've got nothing on you, like this thing being your phone. That is unbelievably powerful.
Yeah,
Unbelievably powerful.
it's better than sex. It's
Oh,
better.
dude.
Not worrying about sex is better than sex.
Yes, that is very true. Very true. And just knowing that that's one area of your life where you've kept order. Because if that thing gets chaotic in that area of your life, you can kiss the other areas goodbye for a long time.
Hmm.
Like especially if I imagine, especially if you're married, but if you're even so, if you're in a committed relationship with a girl, and that area gets chaotic, good luck, man. Good luck trying to go to the gym consistently. Good luck trying to work. On
It's
good
hell.
luck.
Well, it's also
Absolute
like
hell.
you also look at it like it's an area of your life that you have to start de-identifying with at some point. You know, you don't have to. I don't say you don't have to do it like right now, but like you're just not going to be shooting the lights out when you're 67. Eventually, you're going to have to de-identify with the whole endeavor that is like your kind of like sexual prowess. And I'm not saying you have to like cut it off when you're younger, and but it's like it's something that helps us stop like pressurizing. It's like, hey, this is like a thing people do. This is a thing I do. I have certain rules and boundaries around it, and those rules are, like we said, for obvious reasons because they can have like
Yeah.
life changing implications if you're not careful about it. But it's also like, it's just enjoy it. Try to enjoy it. Not have it be like a negative force in your life. And just
Yeah.
just go about it like that. And people are human. Like you see other girls out, and you're like, damn, she's attractive. They're gonna see other guys and be like, he's attractive, and it's like. And like when I see guys who might be the case, I quietly hate them, and I'm like, "Fuck you, dude." But it's like, I don't let it ruin my life. It's it is what it is.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah, sorry I took us off on this track, but I just thought it was a good thing. We never really went deep on this topic, and I think a lot of guys could really benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Ray was saying, lucky for us, our boner stopped working around age 36, and it's like, well, I'm hitting 35. Here's the thing. Here's the key. And this is a hot topic. I'm 35, and like they're still working, thank God. But it's like no fapping. Now I'm not saying you have to be like you don't have to be like I'm never jerking off ever. I'm not watching porn. I just
Uh-huh.
don't do it. So when it comes time to have sex, it's like I'm ready.
Mm.
And I think the cold showers help. But yeah, if you're like 36 years old and you're still ripping the porn all the time, and again, this isn't for everybody, but for me personally, if I was like hitting that 3 days, three
Ray,
four days
Ray
a
said
week.
I picked that number on purpose.
I know I've had multiple people tell me that, like, oh man, when you get your upper 30s, it's just not what it was, and maybe that's the case. But it's like, dude, I just don't worry about it, dude. Like, it's like, yeah, it's just that's something that you'll have to just come and battle with. And again, it's like, I think that's what happens with that midlife crisis stuff. You get guys who are like, like the life is basically being like, hey, dude, like you can't stand in cool jeans at a nightclub and like pull young chicks. Like your life is set up to where that would devastate it. And rather than being like, all right, I'll just fall back from that and just start defining myself through other ventures, it's just
Mhm.
like I'm gonna fuck my secretary, and it's like, and then you just ruin everyone's life who's connected to you.
Yep.
It's like, way to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Plus, also to Ray's point, this is also a dramatically under talked about topic with men. Go watch the movie Game Changers, and then we can all chat about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like there's actually physical reasons, like biological reasons that have to do with your diet, with those types of things. And I don't mean to sound like a hippie woo-woo type of person, but it's the reality. So if you look at pills that help with that, that's what they fix eventually. But also just for your own health purposes, apparently, and there's an entire book written on this. It has to do with blockages, basically through blood flow, etc. That very much have to do with your diet, like 100%. So go and check out the movie Game Changers. There's also a book. The guy who wrote the book on that particular topic is in the movie Game Changers, and he does all this experiment. So if you guys have not watched it, go and watch it. If you have questions about that particular topic.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, dude, so we're kind of coming near the end. I also
Yep.
want to real quick.
Oh, sorry, man.
Dude, please. I like talking about that kind of. I think that stuff's good to talk about because otherwise, it's the stuff that quietly bounces around in people's minds and slowly kind of like, typically in my experience, will devolve. If I keep an idea in my head like that for too long, it'll just start mixing in with all the bats in my cave and just come out of some weird paranoid shit. And I'm like,
Yep.
everyone's out to get me. But so what I'm thinking right now, and I want to start also on the Mondays. This is something that helps me personally, and trying to
Yeah.
like, toss this out to everybody is like really kind of making it known as like what you're trying to do with this week. And
100%.
I would say I'm going to bust out my stuff again because I don't want to lose this practice. It's been super helpful for me. So the thing I want to do, and I want to try to check back in, is I want to finish. I have the Logotherapy 5 script. I want to finish that. That'll like finish that whole thing of logotherapy, and then I can do mindfulness, and then I can start doing the stuff with Psychnol that I wanted to do, which is going out and giving live talks to like NA meetings, and like schools and blah blah blah. So I want to like have enough information on the website and then start to do it like in person. So I'm excited for that. I'm rethinking, and I kind of want to see what you guys think about doing it for Rhomas too. I'm going to do this for Psychnol. I'm taking this week to think of so I want to start making it a lot more interactive and add some form of structure to it. So I want to think of like using the 12 steps model, thinking of a 12 steps for Psychnol for people who want to do stuff and like on their own, but like geared a little bit differently, and do that for Psychnol and add that in the chat and blah blah blah. So, and then I'm going to throw stuff out to the people in there now because I want to try to brainstorm it together and figure out like what would be good to do. I have some ideas, so I'm going to do that with Psychnol. It'd be cool to do that with Rhomas as well.
Yeah,
because again, just adding that structure and like giving people stuff to start helping each other.
Yep, 100%. Can I throw one option out there as well? So yes, definitely let's get back to our calling our shots on Monday. And then how would you feel about reporting, if you're comfortable with it, reporting our scorecard number on Friday?
Yeah.
Like that for me, I do it by myself now. And that for me just helps me so much. Like for instance, I'm looking at my scorecard right now, and there's something to every Monday morning looking at the fact that I have an F. And right now I brought it up to a D. So it gets me to this beginner's mindset. It's like, yep, I got to rebuild the castle. Every single Monday, rebuild the castle, if that makes sense. So right now I've got 8 points. I still have 3 things left to go on the scorecard, but I just keep on hearing guys through the Discord and sending me text messages how much the scorecard is helping. And dude, I think it's just, I think it'd be great if we could start to re-implement that again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I need to put the scorecard back in my life as well. So, yeah, let's do that. Just
cool.
Bam, hit my score. Be sick, dude. Come up, you get called in the hot seat. Like, score's 84, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, as long as you're comfortable with it, I'm great because I'm doing it myself right now, and I'd love to do it with you.
I like that a lot.
Cool. And then, so my shots for this week, I want to nail my seminar tomorrow. So the $4,000 that I told you guys, it's probably going to be more like $5,000 in the spending on this marketing, but I'm teaching a class tomorrow. So I want to nail that. Then now Wednesday, I'm doing a webinar. And then I want to start on the next educational video for finance. So those are the 3 that I want to pick for this week.
Fuck yeah, man. Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Well, dude,
cool.
So, again, I would tell people, especially in the Discord for Rhomas, there's that. I had it in the little accountability thing. So if there's something you're trying to do, go in that little accountability # like little Discord server,
little channel.
And you can be like, hey, I'm trying to do this week. Someone hold me to it. And that way, like if 2 people want to do 100 push-ups a day, it's like, hey, let's team up on this thing and check in every day on this little channel. I think that's a pretty good thing to do. Hashtag,
hell yeah.
Sorry, Ray. Fucking hashtag. My boners still. I guess all the blood's going to my boners right now. My brain doesn't work at all.
Awesome. Cool, brother.
Right,
anything
dudes.
else?
That's it.
All right, dudes. Have a killer week and talk to you guys on Friday.
All right, bros.